The Nile River, the bedrock of a civilization that defies logic and scale. We think we know the story of ancient Egypt, the pharaohs, the pyramids, the mummies. But beneath the sands of consensus, a different story whispers. A story of a lost age, where advanced science may have coexisted with mystical ritual. Our journey begins not at Giza, but far south at the Ptolemaic Temple of Hathor in Dendera. A magnificent structure, but one that hides a secret in its darkest crypts. A series of stone reliefs preserved for millennia which have shattered the standard archaeological narrative. They are known simply as the Dendera Lights. Look closely. What do you see? Mainstream archaeology insists these are purely symbolic, a representation of cosmic creation. But to a growing counter-movement of researchers, engineers, and curious minds, they look like something else entirely. They look like light bulbs. Imagine large, oblong glass enclosures. Inside, a serpent, the filament waving towards a base supported by a jed column, a structure that some claim resembles a massive electrical insulator. Could this truly be a pictorial manual, a blueprint for a lost technology? The idea suggests that the ancient Egyptians might have possessed eternal light or some form of advanced electrical illumination thousands of years before Thomas Edison. This is the core of the controversy. Did the civilization that built the pyramids also possess a technology to light their deepest, darkest chambers without fire? Or is this a spectacular but ultimately flawed case of pareidolia, seeing what we want to see in the art of a deeply religious people? In this comprehensive deep dive, nearly 5,000 words long, we will dissect the Dendera Lights. We will analyze the visual evidence, explore the powerful religious interpretations, confront the mystery of the no-soot chambers, and weigh the arguments of both the scientific community and the pseudo-archaeologists who challenge them. By the end, you will have all the information necessary to decide for yourself. Is this technology lost or merely misunderstood? Let's first address why these reliefs, found specifically in the crypts beneath the main temple, have attracted such technical scrutiny. There are several key elements that proponents of the lost technology theory seize upon. The enclosure. The most striking feature is the large, oblong structure itself. It is often compared to a Crookes tube or an early plasma lamp. A Crookes tube is an early experimental electrical discharge tube invented in the mid-19th century, which allowed scientists to study cathode rays. The shape depicted in Dendera is consistent with such a device, a vacuum or near-vacuum enclosure required for electrical discharge. The filament, the serpent. Inside the bulb is a serpent, which is symbolically linked to the god Harsomptus. Crucially, the serpent is not merely floating. Its body runs the length of the enclosure, culminating at the other end. In a light bulb analogy, the serpent takes on the role of the filament, or the plasma beam itself. In some images, the snake emerges from a lotus flower, which is connected to the base. This lotus is sometimes interpreted as the starter, or the point of energy ingress. The support, the jed column. Perhaps the most compelling, yet contentious piece of evidence is the base of the structure. The bulb rests on a jed column. In ancient Egyptian iconography, The Djed is the backbone of the god Osiris and symbolizes stability and endurance. However, in the technical interpretation, researchers like Erich van Deniken and others have highlighted its structural resemblance to a high-voltage insulator. The stack of horizontal disks could theoretically separate the energized circuit from the ground or the supporting structure. Furthermore, relief images sometimes show what appear to be cables running from the Djed column, often interpreted as the power source connection. The power source, the box or chest. At the foot of the Djed column, in some of the reliefs, are small box-like structures. In the technical reading, these boxes are not religious chests, but batteries or power capacitors. When combined with the Djed insulator and the bulb, the entire composition is interpreted as a fully connected, self-contained unit for electrical illumination. The argument is simple. The resemblance is too close to be dismissed as mere coincidence. The components, the vacuum tube, the conductor or filament, the insulator, and the power box align with the basic elements of an electrical lighting system. This, for the proponents, is direct proof that the Egyptians understood and utilized electricity on a scale we refuse to acknowledge. Before allowing the technical theories to sway our judgment, we must explore the overwhelming consensus of Egyptology. For scholars, the Dendera Lights are not light bulbs at all, but rather profound, complex religious narratives carved in stone. The Sarcophagus Theory, the creation myth. The dominant academic interpretation views the scene as a visual metaphor for the creation of light and the rebirth of the sun god Re. The enclosure is the womb or sky. The oblong container is a visual representation of the primordial waters or the celestial womb of Nut, the sky goddess. It is the place of darkness from which light is born. The shape itself is similar to the hieroglyph for sky or firmament. The serpent is the god Harsamtus or Re. The snake is Harsamtus, the unification of the sun god Re and the god Horus. This god represents the rebirth of the sun every morning. The serpent emerging from the lotus flower is a classic, powerful symbol in Egyptian mythology. The sun god emerging from the primeval lotus, Nun, at the moment of creation, bringing order, Ma'at, out of chaos. The light is not electricity, but the divine spark of the sun's rebirth. The Djed column is stability and power. The Djed column, as noted, is the backbone of Osiris. In this context, it represents stability, resurrection, and the enduring power of the Creator God to sustain the cycle of life and death. It is the spiritual foundation, not a ceramic insulator. Furthermore, the reliefs are found in the crypts, subterranean chambers typically used to store valuable cult objects, sacred vessels, and ritual items used in the temple's daily ceremonies. The wall inscriptions surrounding the Dendera Lights are highly religious, dedicating the temple and its contents to Hathor and other deities. There is absolutely no textual evidence, no hieroglyphic label, no technical instruction that accompanies these images to suggest they depict a machine, tool, or engineering process. They are consistent with the inventory of the crypts, documenting the sacred objects and rituals performed within. To an Egyptologist, the claim that this is a technical manual for a light bulb is akin to looking at a medieval stained glass window depicting the Holy Trinity and arguing it's a blueprint for a nuclear reactor. The context, The religious inscriptions, the mythological characters, Thoth, Hathor, the chamber's purpose, overwhelmingly favors the ritualistic explanation. The light is the light of creation, not 120 volts AC. The Dendera Lights controversy gains its true momentum not from the reliefs themselves, but from a persistent, tantalizing question that archaeology has yet to definitively silence. How did the Egyptians light their tombs and subterranean construction sites without leaving behind soot? In nearly all of the deepest, most concealed chambers, tombs, and crypts, including those at Giza and other New Kingdom sites, the ceilings and walls, despite being covered in elaborate paintings and inscriptions, are perfectly free of soot or carbon deposits. The problem with oil lamps and torches. For millennia, humans illuminated dark spaces using open flame technology, torches, oil lamps, or wicks in fat. All of these methods produce smoke, and over time, that smoke leaves a black, carbon-based residue, or soot, on the ceilings and upper walls. If ancient artists spent weeks or months meticulously decorating the interior of the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, or the deep passageways of the Temple of Hathor's crypts using hundreds of open flame lamps, the evidence of that illumination should be visible. Yet the stone ceilings remain pristine. The conventional solutions. Mainstream archaeology offers two primary conventional explanations for the lack of soot. The system of reflective mirrors. This is the most accepted theory. It suggests the Egyptians used a complex system of highly polished copper or silver mirrors strategically placed to reflect sunlight down long shafts, corridors, and eventually into the deeper chambers. The difficulty, while theoretically sound, this system is inherently inefficient. Light intensity drops exponentially with distance and reflection. To reach a deep, windowless chamber with enough light to allow an artist to paint fine details would require an enormous, perfectly maintained setup. Furthermore, there is a distinct lack of archaeological evidence for these complex, large-scale mirror systems. We find small cosmetic mirrors, but not the industrial-scale reflectors required. Sootless lamps. The second theory suggests the Egyptians used specially crafted lamps that burned salt or specific types of vegetable oil or fat that produced minimal smoke. The difficulty, while some oils do burn cleaner than others, achieving absolute zero soot over a long duration of use in a closed environment is chemically dubious without forced ventilation. The counterargument's leverage. This is where the lost technology camp finds its strongest footing. If the conventional methods are problematic and the chambers are consistently spotless, what if the Dendera Lights are the answer? They propose that the Egyptians overcame the illumination problem entirely by using an artificial, clean light source, a form of electricity, or perhaps even a phosphorescent material, which produced the eternal light described in ancient texts. The sootless mystery thus becomes the crucial circumstantial evidence supporting the radical interpretation of the Dendera Lights. To understand the tenacity of the Dendera Lights theory, we must place it within the wider context of ancient electricity claims. The idea that Egypt was powered by a lost grid is not an isolated claim. It is supported by other, equally controversial archaeological finds. The Baghdad Battery, the Persian Battery. Discovered near Baghdad in 1936, this artifact consists of a clay jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. Dated to the Parthian or Sasanian period, around 250 BC to AD 640, when filled with an electrolyte, like grape juice, the assembly creates a weak electrical current, approximate 0.5 to 2 volts. The controversy. While chemically a battery, archaeologists overwhelmingly believe it was used for electroplating, a common practice at the time, or possibly for medicinal purposes, but not as a power source for widespread technology. Proponents, however, argue it demonstrates that the knowledge of electrical generation existed in the ancient Middle East, making the Dendera Lights plausible. The Giza Pyramid as a power plant. The most radical theory, popularized by authors like Christopher Dunn, suggests the Great Pyramid itself was not a tomb, but a massive engineered machine, a resonant energy collector, or power plant. The theory. The pyramid's structure, materials, and shafts were allegedly designed to harness the Earth's natural vibrations, seismic energy, and convert them into electrical power, specifically microwave or sonic energy. The King's Chamber, built of highly resonant granite, would have been the power transmission center. The Dendera connection. In this context, the Dendera Lights are seen as the receiving or application devices for the energy generated at Giza. The energy was generated centrally and distributed to local temples and sites, providing the clean, sootless light needed for all their subterranean activities. The missing wires. A critical flaw in all these theories is the complete lack of physical evidence for the necessary infrastructure, wires, insulators, switches, or protective casings. For a civilization to operate a complex power grid capable of sustaining light bulbs, even primitive ones, on a continental scale, they would have needed miles of conducting material. Copper was used extensively, but no recognizable electrical wiring has ever been found in a New Kingdom or Ptolemaic context. This is a huge hole in the lost technology argument. Proponents counter that the wires were made of perishable materials, or perhaps the energy was transmitted wirelessly, using resonant technology similar to Nikola Tesla's ideas. The scientific community maintains a strong stance against the technical interpretation of the Dendera Lights, viewing it as a classic example of technological anachronism, the tendency to interpret the past using the standards and knowledge of the present. The contextual overlap. The most powerful rebuttal lies in the total contextual consistency of the Dendera reliefs with established Egyptian religious doctrine. Hieroglyphic proof. The hieroglyphs surrounding the reliefs are not ambiguous. They clearly identify the figures and their actions as religious offerings and rituals related to the god Harsomtus and the goddess Hathor. They describe the ceremonial contents of the crypts. If this were a machine, the accompanying text should have, at the very least, described its function, materials, or operation, something entirely absent. The absence of function. Machines or technical devices in ancient art usually depict action or purpose. The Dendera reliefs depict a static, divine object being presented in a ritualistic manner. The focus is on the sacred object itself, not its operation or construction. The Djed column in context. The Djed column is found throughout Egyptian iconography. It is a well-understood religious symbol of stability. to reinterpret it as an electrical insulator in only one context, while ignoring its consistent spiritual use everywhere else, is considered selective interpretation. It's an argument of convenience, not one based on consistent historical evidence. The no soot mystery revisited. While the soot mystery is genuinely intriguing, the academic view holds that a combination of factors is likely responsible, and that the inability to definitively prove a conventional lighting method does not automatically validate an unconventional one. Efficient ventilation. Egyptian builders were masters of air circulation. It is highly probable that some form of natural or forced ventilation, using bellows or wet cloth to catch smoke, was employed to keep the air moving, preventing soot from settling on the direct workspace. The painter's technique. It is also plausible that the artists working in the deepest parts of the tomb used the lighting sporadically and with extreme care, perhaps using only a small, extremely clean-burning oil lamp, or even reflecting sunlight into the chamber only for the initial outlining and final detailed work, rather than for the entire process. The principle of parsimony, Occam's razor. The fundamental scientific principle used here is that the simplest explanation that fits all the known facts is usually the correct one. Simple explanation. The Dendera reliefs are symbolic art depicting a known religious creation myth, consistent with thousands of other Egyptian texts and carvings. Complex explanation. The Dendera reliefs are a technological blueprint for a sophisticated, high-voltage electrical lighting system powered by an unknown, non-existent energy grid, and used for illumination where the actual evidence for illumination is the absence of soot. For any Egyptologist, the complexity of the technical explanation requires too many unsupported assumptions and contradicts centuries of established linguistic and religious interpretation.
Regardless of whether the Dendera Lights were real technology or profound myth, their persistent appeal tells us something important about our own relationship with the past. The term eternal light is central to the debate. In the technical sense, it implies a bulb that never burns out, powered by a limitless source. But in the mythological sense, it refers to the spiritual light of knowledge and creation, the light that is perpetually reborn. Why does the technology theory resonate? The need for a golden age. Humans have a cultural and psychological desire to believe in a golden age before our own. The idea that ancient civilizations, particularly one as enigmatic as Egypt, possessed superior, lost knowledge, provides a comforting narrative against the idea of slow, linear progress. It makes the past more exciting. Dissatisfaction with mainstream answers. The scientific explanations for the sootless chambers are often complex, speculative, and ultimately unsatisfactory. They lack the visceral thrill of a simple, clean answer like, they had electricity. The visual power. The visual resemblance to a modern light bulb is undeniably striking. This visual trigger bypasses the need for deep textual or historical context, making the light bulb explanation instantly viral and intuitively appealing to a modern audience. The deeper spiritual meaning. The alternative view suggests that by focusing on technology, we miss the true genius of the ancient Egyptians. Their power was not necessarily in their machines, but in their mastery of the symbolic universe and their integration of cosmic principles into their daily lives and monumental architecture. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the Dendera Lights is not about electricity, but about perspective. To the engineer, it's a machine. To the religious devotee, it's the divine spark. Both views reveal more about the observer than the carved stone itself. The ancient Egyptians had an ethereal wisdom that allowed them to build structures and create art that still baffles and challenges us today. This spiritual intellectual prowess may be the only advanced technology they ever needed.
The Dendera Lights continue to shine a spotlight on the friction between established academia and alternative history. The carvings remain the central icon of the lost technology movement, but the evidence remains circumstantial. The case for technology rests on visual resemblance, the sootless chambers, and the existence of other potential electrical artifacts, like the Baghdad battery. The case for myth rests on overwhelming linguistic context, the hieroglyphs, the religious function of the crypts, and the total lack of physical infrastructure, wires, power stations, for a power grid. Ultimately, the burden of proof rests with those making the extraordinary claim. Until a Jed column is found with demonstrable electrical properties, or a hidden tomb yields genuine ancient copper wiring, the Dendera Lights will remain a testament to the powerful and enduring myth of the lost Golden Age. What we can say with certainty is that the mysteries of ancient Egypt are far from exhausted. Whether you believe the serpent represents a cosmic ray or a plasma filament, the stone walls of Dendera hold a message that continues to inspire awe, debate, and the unending quest to understand the brilliant minds that came before us.